Episode 161, Practical Steps to Achieving Your Goals with Molly Claire.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
It's a new year, and with the new year, many of us will be setting new goals. We all want to make sure that 2024 is our best year yet, and yet many of us are wondering if this will actually be the year that we are able to do it. Coach Molly Claire is here to talk you through 5 very practical steps to make sure your goals come to fruition, and that you can do it in a way that is uniquely yours. Far too often when setting goals, we try to do it the way someone else has, and we end up failing. Molly's steps to achieving goals are focused around doing it the way that works for you. It's almost a sure-proof way to make sure you accomplish anything you set your mind to. If you are ready to achieve big things in 2024 but want to do it with your sanity still intact by the end of the year, be sure to give this episode a listen. It's a great one. Enjoy.
Well, everybody, welcome to the podcast today. I have one of my favorites with me, Coach Molly Claire. Hi, Molly.
Hello. So good to be here again.
Always fun to have you. We were just saying that last time Molly was here, she had her cute daughter, Daisy. Daisy had written a book has written a book, and Daisy was on to speak about it, but I get to have Molly to myself today.
So excited to be here. Especially at the first of the year, there's always like new energy, fresh start. So
I know. Well, I like the term new energy for you is like you always have energy. So if you have new energy, I don't know what like old energy is for you. You got some good energy, Molly. Anyway, I'm going to let Molly introduce herself really fast, and then we will get kind of into our topic of conversation today, which I am thrilled to be speaking about, or not, I'm not speaking about it, but I'm thrilled to be having a conversation with Molly about. But Molly, can you introduce yourself for us?
Yes. So I am Molly Claire. I am a master life and business coach. I've been a coach for nearly 10 full years now, which is crazy to think. And as a coach, I've spent my time working with moms in their personal life specifically. I've also spent quite a bit of time actually helping coaches to be more effective, learn their coaching skills, and really get their businesses running. And I love it. I love mentoring coaches because I feel like coaches are really here to help people lead up change and growth in their lives. And I just think that's what it's all about, right? Mm-hmm. How can we not have energy when we're growing, when we're expanding and becoming a better version of ourselves? So I love what I do. I help coaches with really mastering their coaching skills and also creating a very clear program so that coaches can be effective in helping all of you listening, right, to make effective changes in your lives. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad that Molly loves what she does because she has been an integral part in me doing what I do. I've been trained by Molly. I've gotten to work with Molly. She's been my personal coach. So I'm happy she's here. I did fail to mention, like, her daughter is an author of a book, but Molly's an author of a book as well. The Happy Mom Mindset, right? Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yep. The Happy Mom Mindset. Listen, if you are a mom, any stage, any phase, I mean, honestly, I've had dads like love it as well. Get this book because I just think it's, as parents, I don't think we can have enough support. So I like to think of it as like a love letter to you and your very best friend helping you navigate motherhood in all its stages. So,
yeah, well, we need all the help we can get at all times. And
right?
Molly is a great person to get that help from. Okay. So as she mentioned, Molly, one of the things she does is she helps coaches create programs. And I've actually taken that program from Molly. And we're going to kind of translate that a little bit today into how our audience, how you guys who are listening today can also use those same principles in your life. So Molly, let's
Yeah.
get started there. Tell me how you see this being applicable to our listeners, and let's
Mhm.
just go from there.
Yeah. So I think that most people can identify things in their life they want to change, right? Or things about themselves that they want to change. And isn't this the great question, right? How do we actually make change? How do we create new things in our life? New levels of income, better relationships, whatever it is, right? Better health. And I think especially the first of the year, this is like top of mind for everyone. And so of course, I'm talking to all of you, most of which are not coaches. But when I'm working with my coaches, I'm helping them to put a structure in place in their program so that their clients, all of you, can be successful in creating change, right? And so
Mhm.
so the same things that my clients are coaching their clients on and helping them with, these principles apply to everyone here. So as you're thinking about changes you want to make, we can hit on some of the key things to building in a plan for you that will work. So,
Okay. So good. All right. So what do you think
yeah.
those key things are?
Okay. So number one, I realize this might seem extremely obvious, but it's very important, is to make sure that you have a clear end goal in mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like I said, this may seem obvious, but where we get off track a little bit, I think, is when we have 25 end goals in mind because we're trying to bite off more than we can chew. We're trying to change everything at once, and it rarely works. The other reason I want to highlight this, even though it may seem obvious, is when I say a clear end goal in mind, it's really important to think about and actually imagine yourself being there. Because I think it's one thing to say, oh, I want to have, a better marriage, or I want to lose weight. But it's a very different thing to say, where I want to go is having this level of health, whatever that means, right? It could be a number on the scale. It could be how someone feels. It could be what their lab numbers look like, or how clothes fit. But there's a big difference between saying, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to be healthier, and identifying exactly what you want and why you want it, and taking it a step further. And when I'm in this place, this will be different because I will feel this way. I will be better at this skill or that skill. I won't struggle with this anymore. So it's really the detail in which you are clear with yourself about where you are going with any particular goal.
Mm-hmm. Like there's small detail and there's big detail, right? And so
Yes,
for me, like I have to look at something as like, what's my overarching why? What is my why for doing this?
that's right.
Which can kind of get lumped into that clear end goal thought,
Yes,
like defining what that is. But if I can keep that always at the forefront of my mind, my reason why, that is so helpful for me.
yes. And I think one thing I want to speak to is, I've heard a lot of things about, you think about SMART goals, like a goal should be measurable and you
Mm-hmm.
should put a number on goals, which I just disagree with. I think it can be very helpful, but I think there are a lot of ways we can measure goals. And I think about the perfect example of, improving any relationship with our kids, with our spouse, with our sister, mother, whatever, right? Really, that's not really something that you can put a number on.
Mm-mm.
And rather it's something where you think about what will be different, what will no longer be happening, what will be a part of the equation, right? And how will you feel? And so if anyone is stuck on that, like a goal does not have to have a number to it in order to be like quote unquote measurable, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can know where we're headed, and we can have ways of keeping ourselves on track. So
Yeah, for
that's number one,
sure.
that
Yeah.
clear end goal.
We live in like such an empirical society where we have to be able to quantify and, like you said, measure everything. And I think we can't. And this is, I think, exactly what you're saying. We cannot discount experience in general, right? Like
Oh,
we have to notice what our experience is, and just experiencing change in a relationship or anything, it might not be quantifiably measurable. Is that a phrase? Like we might not be able to measure it, but our experience, we can't discount that, and we
I
feel
mean,
something different.
that's exactly it. And I mean, when I think about the ways I have changed and grown that are the most meaningful and the most impactful, they have nothing to do with any number on a scale in my bank account or any other number, right?
Yep.
It is about, wow, I'm at the point now where I feel more at peace with myself more regularly. I mean, talk about a goal you want to achieve, right? You can't put a number on that. You can't. So,
yeah, you just have to get good at observing yourself and kind of being able to pay attention to what's happening in your life. Okay. So number 1, clear end goal.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Here we are I'm going right back to like that empirical. Let's give a line.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, this is what I do because I mean, in truth, as you know, Heather, when I'm helping my coaches put this together, it's like, these are the principles. This is how you design a program that is going to work for your clients. Yeah. And it is very specific.
I know.
So
well, we like specific. Our brains really do. But sometimes we have to take a step back and just also feel the experience. So
yes.
All right. So clear end goal. Number 2.
We're going to go right through the numbers. Number 2 is making sure, and I'll speak to, because I know you have coaches that listen as well. So I'll kind of speak to both parts of this. But so as a coach, you want to give your clients one easy next step. Because think about this, as people, we think we can do way more in a way shorter period of time than we actually can, right? We can get very overwhelmed when we have too many things right in front of us to do. And so what I recommend with my coaches is make sure that as you have your program in place, you're giving your clients one easy baby step where they only have to focus on that. And then they focus on the next thing. And then they focus on the next thing. And so for your listeners who aren't coaches, how are you setting that for yourself? You have that number 1, right? That clear goal. Now, how are you giving yourself one tiny baby step after another, where you just have to focus on one thing and then another and another? That's number 2.
That is so good. And I tend to be just the opposite person. Like I will think that I've got this huge long list of things that needs to be done. And that makes me feel overwhelmed. And then, but I have to like just sit and write it down. I'm like, oh, there's like only 2 things.
I know, right? Well, it's so funny because I will never forget, this was early in my coaching career, but I had 2 clients right next to each other, back to back. Both of them were experiencing their to-do list as, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. I'm never going to get this done. Well, we did the math, right? We sifted through it. And one of them actually was expecting herself to do about 36 hours worth of stuff in a 24-hour period.
Yep.
And the other person thought something would take her 6 months, and it actually was going to take her about 2 weeks with time to spare. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. It's like, and that's exactly why having that clear goal and having those baby steps that you can check off keep you from being confused into thinking it's overwhelming. This doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's the camp that I sit in. If I can like look at those, the steps, then I'm like, oh, this is a piece of cake. Like my brain doesn't have to spin out on everything because there really is much less involved than I actually think there is.
Yeah.
So helpful.
And here's the other thing that I absolutely have to bring up, because I know a lot of people feel this way. It's like, it sounds good to just have one simple step to take, but a lot of us feel like that's not really enough. Right? It's like, well, it's like, it almost seems like if I have this plan that just has these easy steps, then it's not really that great of an accomplishment.
Right.
Almost like we think it needs to be worse or harder than it is. And so sometimes it's actually very uncomfortable for us to just take a baby step, and that is it. Right? Don't you think? Don't you find that too? Yeah.
It's so important for us to sit with that though, because that is like to be comfortable with accomplishment, or how in whatever way it comes, or however long it takes us. Like it's the value, the importance of it is exactly the same. Like we tend to put like value on these things that just took forever, when in actuality, they're all, you're putting something out into the world that wasn't there before, and it's all like it's useful and needful and necessary and all the things. So
we have this interesting thing, and I think especially like oftentimes culturally in like a church culture environment where it's like we put so much value and emphasis on being busy and working hard. And like, don't get me wrong, I think having a good work ethic and working at something, there's a lot of value in that. But there's nothing more noble about being burned out or going to extremes with things necessarily, right? It's like, am I growing? And this kind of goes back to, this is my thing. Like, as I'm achieving my goals, am I actually becoming who I want to be? And am I actually creating what I want in my life and relationships? And so I think sometimes we really miss the mark when we just think it's about doing a lot and having this hard checklist and being busy. Well, it might feel better because it's giving us this false sense of I'm accomplished, but what are we really accomplishing? And are we really making space for what's most important?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that word noble. And I've heard even you and your sister both kind of have used this phrase, apparently noble, like things like they appear like they're noble, but when you really dive into them, they are just keeping this at this low level of growth because it's a thought choice that is kind of just holding us back from actually taking the next step. And
yes.
And
Totally.
we think things are important and noble, but a lot of things really aren't.
Yeah. So, and I'll just, on this second step before we move on to the next, I'll offer up that like when I'm working with my coaches as they're building their program, of course, I'm practicing what I'm preaching. So the very program they're doing with me is giving them one baby step at a time, right? And this is what I find, and many of you may find this as well, when you think about setting baby steps for yourself toward your goal, is feeling that sense of wanting to skip ahead and make it bigger, or even worrying about what's down the road. So like, for example, if we just make this a practical example, if most people relate to at some point wanting something different with their weight, right? But everyone can understand that as a basic idea. And so it's like, if someone is wanting to improve their health or lose weight or eat less or whatever it is, and let's say baby step 1 has to do with incorporating a new health food into their diet or something like that, right? Already they might be thinking and wondering, well, but what about if I start overeating that? And what about when right? Like we start borrowing trouble and thinking we need to shove more things into that first step. And so my advice to all of you as you're breaking this down in baby steps is keep reminding yourself that all you have to do is the one step in front of you, and you have plans for all the other steps, and you will get to them when you get there. But right now, you only have to focus on this one thing. And I find that with my clients, I have to help them do that again and again so that they will be really effective at that one baby step that's in front of them, instead of overwhelming themselves and accomplishing nothing.
Yeah. I've done this like this so many times, and I still have to be reminded of these things every single time because our brain still wants to do all the things just exactly the same as we did it the first time. So it's so good to remember. Okay. So I'm sitting here listening to you speak or talk, and I'm thinking about people who are listening and knowing that for them, as they're listening to this, if they had something very specific in mind, like if you guys have something specific in mind that you want to work on in the next couple months, like go back and look at these steps and really put an action plan in place along with these steps. Like number 1, have a clear end goal. Number 2, make easy next steps. And then we're going to get to number 3, but kind of if you have something in mind as you're listening, that will help you as a listener apply this in a way that will be so helpful for you.
Yes. And I want to say, be okay with doing less. Be satisfied with less. Your goal does not have to be humongous. Have a goal that's reasonable in a reasonable amount of time. And also, I'm a big proponent of having goals set in 90-day increments or less. Right? And so I think when we can be satisfied with less, we can scale the goal down. We can have baby steps that are doable. And then we just, work to support ourselves all the way through it. But it's a practice because it's not something we're used to. We're used to setting big goals and having big steps and you know, a lot of self-sabotage oftentimes along
Yeah.
the way.
Oh, I'm queen of that. So, well, you know that, but I think you're right, because when I look at things, when I set a quote unquote smaller goal, which once again, they're really not, like, there's
Right? They're
value
not.
in all of them. But when
Mhm.
I set those goals, like, my ability to produce and create is so much greater, because I'm not bogged down with the overwhelmation. There's a great word for us, but I'm not
I love
bogged. I
that.
know I'm not bogged down with the overwhelmation of, like, oh, I've got to do this. But when it's like something that's feasible, and my soul kind of was like excited about rather than burned by, it's so
That's
much
right.
easier to do.
That's right. And I mean, I think just as another principle in general for your listeners to take in thinking about goal setting, because hopefully whatever goal you're thinking about right now won't be the last one, right? We're always
Right.
growing and improving and all of that. But something that when I mentor and work with my clients, we always talk about as the year's coming to an end, set the bar really low for what you're finishing in your business before the end of the year. Make
Mhm.
plenty of space in your calendar, right? And if there are things that don't fit in what you can reasonably get done, move them to the middle of January. Nothing is going to fall apart.
No,
Nothing.
and it's like the
Except
best
if
Christmas gift you could give yourself.
that's right. And I guess I'll back up and say what will fall apart is you if you're
Yeah,
trying to cram too much in, right? And
that's
so it's
right.
like I don't know. And I say all of this realizing that I speak a little bit out of both sides of my mouth, because I think I set some pretty big goals and I go after them for sure. But the more I put in a practice of expecting less of myself within a certain amount of time, the more productive I am,
Mhm.
the more creative, the more you enjoy it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about how you said you're a big proponent of 90-day goals, and I love that. You've tutored me in that area well, but you kind of look at our year. If we look at a calendar year, like right now we're January, and 90 days out from now is like spring break time, right? So it's like
Hmm.
you kind of give yourself that winding down time. Almost, for
That's
me,
right.
I have to do that at the end of almost every 90-day period, because there seems to be, then it's the summer, and then it's like the end of summer, and so I allow that winding down almost, for me, at the end of every 90-day period, because that is how I
That's right.
kind of how I roll.
That's
So
exactly right. Yeah. And along those lines of, the 90-day goal increments. I mean, as you know, when I'm working with my clients and we set the goal for the 90 days, I have a check-in every month with them. And that last month of the 90 days, it really is about, okay, where are we? What have you accomplished? What's left? And how do we pare it down to make sure that it's doable so that
mhm,
you're finishing the 90 days comfortably? And sometimes clients can actually add more in. Other times they definitely have to move things. It really
mhm,
doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter. As
yeah.
long as we stay the course and are consistent, we're going to keep moving forward. So,
Yep. And that's the whole point, right? It's never about the end. I mean, kind of a little bit about the end, but really it's more about the growth that happens along the way, right?
yes,
It's
absolutely.
always the journey, not the destination. Although we love the destination too, but
Yes.
there's so much to get in the process of.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, we've got one, two. How many more
Mhm.
steps are we going to go over here today?
We're going to do three more.
Three. Okay. All
Okay.
right, let's go.
The last one's not really a step, but it's in the formula. That's what we'll say.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
So the next one is having a way of tracking your progress. Okay. And I want to reiterate that there are a lot of ways you can do this. And whatever way you do it, it needs to be helpful and encouraging for you. So
Mhm.
here's what I mean. I think a lot of times when people think about tracking and accountability, it's like, oh, because how do they experience that? They experience that as seeing where they were supposed to be or where they want to be, and they look at the deficit, and then we beat ourselves up and we're frustrated. And so I think that accountability and tracking has kind of gotten a bad rap a little bit and is something we kind of dread. I don't know. Do you
Mhm.
see that in clients too, or
Mhm.
or relate to that in ways?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. And so I think that as you are thinking about that one goal that you want to achieve, and you have that clear end goal in mind, you have the baby steps to getting there. The question is, how are you effectively keeping yourself on track? And I find that one of the best ways we can do this is just being curious about what we have accomplished, what we haven't yet accomplished, and why that is. Because I think when we can look at it from that place of curiosity, that's when you're actually problem solving, right? So let's say that I had a goal to, run a certain amount of miles every week. And, 1 week I find that I didn't run that many miles. Well, I can say, oh, well, how did I do? Well, I didn't make the mark. I should do better next week. I'm not doing a good job. Like, that's not very helpful, right? But when I can say, okay, I didn't hit this marker this week, why is that? And I can find out the actual reasons, right? Which might be, okay, did I get distracted? Did something else come up that actually is very justifiable? And I'm not upset at all that I didn't meet this goal. So when we can ask, why is that? And how do I solve for that going forward? That's when we actually unlock the solutions to being more consistent. And it doesn't have to be like a beat down to ourselves that we didn't do it, right? It's just like, I wonder why I did. I wonder why I didn't. And what's the solution for that? That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. The beat down, I think, is what we're all pretty good at. And
Right. We're really good at it.
and it's what keeps us from actually achieving most of our goals, is that beat down that we give ourselves. We get so sick of it.
Yeah. And I think there is a huge lie that many people tell themselves, and I've done this at times as well, that like, if I'm not hard on myself, then I won't accomplish anything. If I'm not beating myself down, if I'm not looking at where have I gone wrong, what do I need to fix? If I'm not doing that, then I won't get better. And I just don't believe that's true.
I had a client once, and she's like one of the most methodical. She really was wanting to do the work and like really would think things through. And she was also really good at beating herself up. And I asked her a question one time, and it was, has beating yourself up ever actually helped you achieve a goal? And she took an entire week. And I have no doubt that she spent time thinking about this, because that's just the kind of person she is. She's like, she came back the next week and she's like, I really thought about this like really hard for this whole last week. And I can't think of a single thing that helped, that like me beating myself up actually ever helped me accomplish. And
I love that she really thought through it.
Yeah, she really did. And it was life-changing for her, right? For her to recognize that this actually, the thing that I've been thinking has been making a difference in my life all along, has actually been so unhelpful and kept me from so many things.
I mean, and I think that's a good exercise for everyone here listening. And here's what I'll say, because sometimes we could actually find evidence that being hard on ourselves helped us to achieve something. But my question about that is there possibly another way, another motive that might have been more successful, even in terms of what you actually tangibly created or your experience of it, just like you said before, right? Like, I think about when I'm moving toward achieving something, it feels so exciting and expansive to me. It's not like, oh, I have to do this so I can be a better person or fix myself. It really does feel expansive. And I think that the more I'm connected with that, the more I achieve. And I know now we're getting into this kind of like coachy, like woo-woo speak, right? But come on, we can't resist sometimes.
We can't help ourselves.
But I think really for those of you listening, like, I think if you find yourself buying into this lie that beating yourself up or being hard on yourself is improving you, I want to also ask, what is it costing you? Because if it's costing you your own sense of self-worth, or your own belief that you are loved and valued as a human being, which I think a lot of times is what it does, it's just not worth it. Even if, and I don't think this is true, but let's just say for the sake of argument, that it did actually, beating yourself up did actually help you to be more effective in achieving something, is it really worth the cost? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to look at it. What's the cost of it? And once again, like, we have brains that we're really good at that profit loss and this, like measuring things, and yeah, that cost is the expense of something to us is worth taking a look at.
And the other thing is that when we're always trying to achieve something from a place of beating ourselves up or not good enough, we can get a bit of a high when we achieve something, because then we're like, oh, now I get to feel worthy. But when we don't, man, it's rough, right? It really is like we're putting our sense of worth in this exterior goal. And it's like, I don't know, it's just not a very nice thing to do to ourselves.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. So, oh, good points. Okay. Number 4.
Hey, next up is set a clear plan and be totally flexible with it. Okay. So as you're listening to this, like, I do think it's helpful for me to explain kind of what this looks like in terms of the coaches I'm working with and how it relates to your audience, right? Because when I'm working with coaches and I'm helping them set their program for their clients, they are my coaches are very specific about what they're teaching, what the process is, right? They have everything perfectly in place. But then what I also am encouraging them to do is to know when to let the plan go, when to just meet their client wherever they are in the process so that they can make the coaching applicable to what the client needs. So now let's take this to your listeners, right? Who are thinking, okay, well, what does this mean? It means, like, does this mean I have a set plan, but then I just like give up and abandon my goal when I feel like it? No, this is definitely not what I'm saying, right? But if you think back to, so we have, for you listening, you have your clear end goal. You have your baby steps set, right? You have a plan for tracking it. Well, that process, or whatever your plan is, or whatever you think needs to be in place, I think it's a good idea to be very specific about what you put in place. And this connects back exactly to what I was just saying about the tracking, right? And saying, okay, why didn't I? And why didn't I meet this last goal, right? And what is it that needs to change? I think that's when we can remember that a plan is only as effective as our ability to actually reach the end goal. And so as you have your set plan, give yourself permission to change the plan along the way, right? And if the plan isn't working for any reason, reevaluate and change the plan and be totally flexible, giving yourself whatever you need to actually keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most valuable things we can do, because first of all, things change in general, right? Like, we have a plan, and we can't ever start on a path to something unless we just start. So we have to have that plan to do it. But as we all know, like, things change along the way. And if we're unwilling to change and we fight against it because we think, well, it's got to be this way, we actually end up going a lot of times a different place than where we want to end up. And where we end up is oftentimes very different from where we started off going, but it ends up being the right place for us to go if we are listening and we let ourselves be guided by those things that.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I think the idea is when you know where you're going, right? You know that destination, you know what you want, and you chart the path, but you let go of the idea that the path you charted is exactly how you're going to get there. Right? Because I think and for each of you, as you set your goal and you set your baby steps along the way, and as you're tracking towards your goal and you're asking yourself these important questions like, why am I meeting this goal? Why am I not? And allowing yourself to adjust according to your needs, I think that it does a couple really important things. One is, I think it solidifies your personal commitment to achieving that goal. And furthermore, it solidifies your personal commitment to staying the course with any goal, right? It's like, instead of being married to the plan, you are, married to the end goal, anchored in what's at the end, no matter how the journey looks.
And
So
don't
I
you
think,
find, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it does that. And the other thing, and this is probably my favorite part about it, because this is, as you know, Heather, my favorite thing I do with my clients, and hope to reiterate to all of you, that when you take the time to check in with yourself and ask yourself, how can I be more successful this next week? What do I need? What's important to me? When you take the time to ask yourself those questions and connect with you, I think of that as a very sacred and important experience, because we are tuning into who we are and what we need. And that's important.
Yeah.
It's magical.
Well, I think that's exactly what I so rudely interrupted you with. It was like thinking, because a lot of times our end goals are, they are influenced by other people, meaning we think that it's like, this is what we should be accomplishing because so-and-so did it this way. And when we make that plan, it's a good starting point. But when we're able to be flexible and we take the time to tune in, that's when it becomes ours and not somebody else's. Like, the end product of something is truly something unique to us, and it's our path, it's our journey versus the imitation of somebody else's.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and even going back, if we go all the way back to the first step of that clear end goal, right? By the way, I think it's a good idea to find out why you even want to achieve that goal. I know you brought that up, right? The why, but like, do I want to achieve this because it actually matters to me?
Yeah.
Or am I trying to achieve this because I think I'm supposed to, or other people will like me better, or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
And when we talk about like that set plan and flexibility, I know this is a slightly different situation, but I mean, Heather, you being here and doing what you do with the directory interrupted your 90-day plan, right?
Totally.
We were working together, and Heather, she had her plan set for her goals for her 90 days. And I think that's such a perfect example of you being committed to the progress and growth for you and your business. And when this opportunity came up and you were checking in and knew it was right for you, it was a very intentional and clear choice for you to switch course. And yet it was not a switch in you moving toward what you're ultimately doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that just speaks to the fact that we just have to be working towards something. Like, it just feels good to be moving towards something. And a lot of times that something changes, but it's still forward movement. And it's what our souls, it's what we desire. Like, that's what we're all after.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of time, I mean, I can say that this for sure used to be very true for me, that I avoided setting specific goals because I was scared. I was scared to set a goal and then not achieve it. It's like there was so much tied into me achieving or not achieving that goal that I avoided it altogether. And so for any of your listeners that relate to that, the worst that can happen, the very worst that can happen, is you set a goal and you make a lot of steps toward it and you don't achieve it. And guess what you've accomplished? You've made a lot of steps toward it. I mean, I hate to be like, I don't want to put like a negative spin on it, but honestly, I have achieved oh my gosh, I have a story to tell now, but I'll just say this really quick. I have achieved so much in my business, and I cannot tell you how many times I did not meet the goal that I had set. I didn't make the mark, right? And so this is the story. Well, it's not really a story, but there is a show, Undercover Billionaire. And this is like the best example of this goal setting. So have you heard of it, Heather?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Okay. So Undercover Billionaire, and he is a self-made billionaire. He goes undercover, basically is, and they have a couple seasons, but I'm talking about the first season here. He's dropped off in kind of this remote place. He has an old truck. He has $100 in his pocket. He has no contacts in his cell phone. And the idea is that within 90 90 days, I think 90, there's a 90-day goal thing. Within 90
Uh-huh.
days, he is going to build a business that he can sell for $1 million at the end of this 90 days. Okay.
Ooh.
No contacts, no, like seriously. And it is such a great show. And this was such a good lesson learned for me with this. So every week you have this guy setting this outrageous goal for the week. He's like, this week, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to find some jobs. I'm going to make this much money. I'm going to find a place to stay, because he doesn't even have a place to stay. He's nowhere to live. So he sets this goal, and you can see how excited he is. And you know that he's been good at making money. And so there's a part of you that thinks, wow, this is crazy. This guy is going to achieve this goal. And the end of the week comes and he doesn't achieve it. And then you see him so disappointed, right? He's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And now this challenge came up. I'm never going to make it. Like, this is the conversation. And then guess what? The next scene, he's got a new goal. And he's like, okay, this week, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this around. And it's like you see this pattern of success, I believe, where he is not afraid to set a big goal. He's not afraid to proclaim it. He's not afraid to be excited about it. And he's not afraid to go all in. And every time he fails, he's disappointed because he obviously believed he was going to do it, but he's not afraid to set the goal again. And so I don't remember how many episodes. We're going to say there's maybe 10 episodes. All I know is every week he sets a goal, and only one week he actually achieves the number goal that he set. But at the end of it, he doesn't quite have a business that's going to sell for $1 million, but I think it was like maybe 900,000 or something like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that didn't exist before.
No.
Yeah.
So if you're afraid to set goals, don't be afraid. Set the goal. Worst that can happen is it doesn't happen, and then you just set another one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you build the skill of goal setting and growth.
Yeah. Well, and you don't achieve that goal and you set another one, but you achieved a whole lot along the way, right? You learned a whole lot of things about yourself along the way too.
That's right. So. And a lot of things that you didn't even have as part of your goal, but they're just this strategic byproduct, this like extra skill that you've built or extra great thing that's come into your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last thing.
Let's hear it.
Is do what works for you when it comes to setting and achieving goals, okay? Everyone's brain works a little bit differently. Some people are going to do really well with a very rigid schedule. For other people, they will think they should use a rigid schedule, but it never works for them. So any of you that find yourself in this place of thinking there's a better way to set goals, or you should be more type A, or you should be more like that, it's not true. So think about how you work best, what works for you, and how can you really be tailoring your goal setting plan to who you are.
Okay. So Molly, I'm just going to share this with people. And if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Like, I've got a shadow, like sunlight coming right through into my eyes. Anybody watching this on YouTube? But so I was doing one of Molly's programs, and we were creating a program, and Molly, like, one of the steps was to put everything on your calendar, all the little, all your baby steps, put it on your calendar. And so you know exactly when you're going to work on them. And I was like, oh, I'm done with that. And I think Molly was like, I think you asked, okay, so who has the calendaring done and how have you done it? I'm like, not me. Because if I do that, I'll never get it done. Like, putting something on a calendar like that and boxing myself in, it never works for me. I look at it and I just freeze and think I have to do that from 10 to 11. I won't do it. But if I just say by this date, these things are going to be done, that's how it works for me. And so I think it is so true that we have to come to know and recognize who we are and what works for us. And then we do the things that we know work for us. Just because they worked for somebody else does not mean it's going to work for me.
That's right. And that's why, this, Heather, like with my clients, I'm like, this is what I want you to do. And then when they're like, I always struggle with this, I'm like, we talk about it. And sometimes I say, don't take my advice.
Yeah.
Do what you know, right?
Yep.
And I hope everyone here, give yourself permission to be okay with what works for you. Yeah.
Yep. I love it. Molly, this is awesome. And I am so excited to be reminded of these things and to implement them again into my life, because like I said, I have to be reminded of these simple things
all do, right?
All the time. Yeah. Super
Love it.
helpful.
Well, thank
Okay,
you
before
so
we
much.
go, I want you to be able to share with people where they can find you. I know that it's going to be coaches that are going to be seeking for you, not necessarily general, our general audience, but if you would share with people
Sure.
where they can find you, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And the other thing is I've worked with so many coaches for so long that I always can recommend coaches as well for things. So if you have listeners that are looking for something specific, but you can find me at mollyclaire.com. I offer like advanced training for coaches, and I also offer Create Your Killer program, which is kind of what we've been talking about so that you can be more effective in helping your clients achieve results. So, and I also have the Masterful Coach podcast, which is a great place for any coach building your business. We talk about business, we talk about personal life support, and also coaching skill mastery. So where you
good.
can find me.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Molly.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been so awesome.
Love it. Love having you with us. And thank you to all of you listeners for being with us today. And we'll see you again next time. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.